Hello, I'm Jackie Marson and welcome to this week's edition of Love Decoded, brought to you by eHarmony, the site that takes finding love seriously. If you're fascinated by the science of love, decoding the mysteries of attraction and unravelling our ideas of romance, then this is the show for you. This week we will be discussing how to keep love alive beyond the honeymoon stage. We'll be answering your questions throughout the show, so please join in with the conversation in the comments now. I'm joined today by psychotherapist and author Malcolm Stern. Malcolm,
Jackie,
welcome to the show. Really lovely to have you here.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
So let's take it back, right back to sort of basics. How would you define the honeymoon stage? What is that and how long does it last on average?
Well, I call falling in love the temporary lifting of critical faculties. So sometimes you'll meet someone and you'll go, wow, they're amazing. No one's amazing. I mean, we are all amazing, and we're also the other side of that as well. So, but basically what happens when you fall in love is you have this rush to the system, and you see this person as the ideal partner. Yeah. That's not going to last. It's guaranteed not to last. For some people, they do have relationships that last a long time through this period. So falling in love typically takes anything from 3 months to 2 years before you have to go to the other side. I
was going to say that, yes, I'd read, I will say like between 9 and 18 months, but you've extended that a little bit, like 3 shorter, up to 2 years.
Yes, and I think what happens is basically if it's a short one, often what happens is the person's true personality, especially if there's some disorder in there, will come through quite quickly.
Right.
And you suddenly realise you're not with the person you thought you were with, and that's a real turn-off, especially if there's signs of something violent or controlling, then that can tend to turn love off.
Yeah, yeah, but the sort of the normal range of relationships.
Yeah, normal range of relationships, probably 3-4 months up to 2 years. And actually, if you've got a long distance relationship, you can go up to 3 or 4 years as well.
Ah, well, because that kind of dilutes it.
Yeah, because you dilute it and you don't see each other that often.
Yeah, so, the excitement can keep going. So what is it? I understood, like, you know, it's about hormones, it's about the chemicals in the brain. We have a rush of that hormone called oxytocin, which is also the cuddle hormone, the breastfeeding hormone, the one that evolution has put there to bond us, really. Is that right? But then that begins to wear off at the end of that honeymoon period. Is that your understanding?
It is guaranteed to wear off. You are bound to be disappointed with your partner in some way, shape or form. Otherwise, unless you're robots sitting watching TV all the time, you're going to find out there are parts of them that you didn't know existed, that you don't like very much. But then you're going to find out there are parts of you didn't know existed that you also don't like very much. And so a relationship is a wonderful way of getting to know yourself better as well as the other.
So that bit of when you suddenly, I mean, Harville Hendricks calls it, he likes the kind of neat little thing that we can remember, but he talks about going from ideal to ordeal to real deal. And we can talk about some of those stages later. But that bit about going from ideal, that's what you were talking about when we're kind of starry-eyed and we just see all the wonderfulness in them, really, don't we?
Yes.
And then I think what he would call ordeal, and you probably do too, the difficult bit, is it's almost like the scales fall off our eyes.
Yes.
The things that once we found attractive suddenly begin to irritate us. Is that in your experience?
Yeah, so for example, if you've got someone who's really neat and tidy and someone who's really scruffy and all over the place, perhaps the neat and tidy person will look at the scruffy person and think initially, wow, they're so free in themselves. The scruffy person will look at the neat and tidy person and go, God, they're so disciplined and together. But actually they might just be really uptight and limited, and the person who's scruffy just might be a bit of a slob. Similarly with so many characteristics, but if you're kind of quite shy, you can be attracted to the extrovert, because it's almost like they can hold that part for you, isn't it? Well, the map I often draw of this is that it's almost like 2 parts come together, so that you fall in love, you see someone who actually completes the circle of who you are. And then, because life keeps moving, that circle dissolves at some point, and then you've got to find something else, which we'll talk about in a minute. But actually, I think for a long time, we go from a place of need. We need to be with another. So we're looking to fall in love with someone who's going to match us, who's got the characteristics we think we don't have. That wonderful book by John Cleese and Robin Skinner, Families and How to Survive Them.
he talks about an experiment or that's been repeated often, that you could put 100 people in a room, and if you knew this information about them, subconsciously we are drawn to fall in love with the person that has those missing pieces.
Yes.
And that you could map that and you would be like 90% accurate. Is that, again, in your experience, is that?
I think it's not a science, you see, it's an art form of the universe.
Yes.
Fall in love with either the right person or the wrong person. And there's a learning in every situation in which we engage deeply with another human being. Actually, falling in love is often falling in lust. It is, because that chemical attraction, that sexual attraction, is a very potent part of the falling in love process.
And is that the bit that only lasts between the 3 months and the 2 years? Do we get into trouble when those hormones stop coursing around us?
It depends what your relationship's based on. If your relationship's based a lot around sex, then if that starts to disintegrate, then your relationship's going to have a strong chance of disintegrating. But sometimes a relationship's based on a similar way of thinking. I use a template, which is, there are 4 ways in which we can judge how we are relating to another human being that we're in a relationship with. One is on a physical basis, which isn't just sexual. It's also about how you are in the world together. Can you go to parties together? Can you meet your friends together? So physically, you've got to have some attunement. Intellectually, you've got to have some attunement, because it's very unlikely that someone who reads The Sun is going to be drawn to someone who reads The Guardian. There's going to be a sort of like a mismatch. And there's often like an exchange of ideas is what makes a relationship exciting. Then there's emotional. Are you someone who gets emotional, who has anger, because we all have it, it's a natural part of us? Can you grieve around your partner? Can you be happy around your partner?
Right.
Or do you feel squashed and diluted? And the last is the spiritual, that actually you have to have some understanding of the same thing, that who are we beyond the persona that we present to the world.
Wow. So I like those. I'm going to recap them. So the physical. These are like the 4, almost for you, the 4 pillars of compatibility.
Yes, correct. Are they? Correct, yes.
And that's very
Good title for a book. Thank you, Jack.
I want the 4 pillars of compatibility.
Yes, lovely.
That's very eHarmony, because their basis of matching is on this very in-depth questionnaire that I imagine I don't know about the physical, because, I imagine it would try to cover all these. Absolutely, their essence is about compatibility. So you're saying physical, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual.
Correct.
So let's go back to tie it back to our theme of today. When the honeymoon period is over, or more important, like the positive is how we keep that alive. Oh, yeah.
Well, what I would say is that little map is key, because if that map doesn't exist and you're just falling in lust with each other, and there's no compatibility around intellectual and emotional or spiritual, for example, your relationship is going to disintegrate. So I think that if we go back to that falling in love, I think it's a great confidence trick of the universe. It makes us fall for another human being and draw us in at a level that we'd never normally go in our rational, careful self.
Well, again, so the confidence trick of the universe is the hormones.
Yes,
really.
Exactly.
It's the hormones and the chemicals and the brain chemicals.
Yes.
Which is a confidence trick. I like that phrase, but it's also evolutionary biology, isn't it? I imagine that's the argument behind it, that you stayed together long enough for your mate, your chosen mate, to father the next generation.
Yes.
And that they would then hang around to make sure it wasn't taken off and eaten by a wolf, that they could maybe bring the food while that was happening.
Yes.
And now in today's 21st century, we're looking for far more than that. And that's part of the problem, really, isn't it? That we're evolutionary designed for one thing and we want another.
We do, but there's a different rule book, you see. I think what's happening today is that we need partners for a different reason altogether. And it's very easy to sort of to find a partner with whom you're going to clash a lot of the time. You're going to spend all your energy on the relationship. You don't want to be doing that. But the relationship needs enough energy spending on it that it keeps cultivating it, so it doesn't grow weeds over it.
Ah, that metaphor of the garden.
Yes.
Tending the garden of your relationship. Let's come on then. Let's move on to what Harville calls, if we've gone out of the ideal into the ordeal.
Yes.
There isn't really just changing one letter, but would you agree with that after this honeymoon period comes the struggle?
It's fairly, I mean, that's fairly broad, but yes, definitely. I would agree.
And what then happens in the struggle? So one of the things you've already said is that the thing we could have been most attracted to, like they were neat and we're untidy, and we thought that was marvellous, and that would complete us, or would learn from that. Suddenly it begins to irritate the hell out of us.
Yes, exactly.
They're like, oh my God, you're so OCD, you put everything away and you're scrubbing the kitchen, and
And not just that, it's like, you want me to be like that as well. So that's the other part, once you bed in the relationship.
So we then come into that inverse that comes into kind of then intolerance and irritation, and then fighting, really, arguing, fighting. What do you say about that? Because I know you do a lot of work around conflict resolution.
It's healthy.
Okay.
It's healthy. It's the relationship. You often see someone say, my God, I didn't know that they possibly could have split up. They seemed so together. And what you often see are people who are, it's almost like you create a Stepford Wives syndrome, where you look like you're really happy. I don't know if you remember Mad Men, the series, where these 50s women were playing the game.
Yes.
They were fitting into the roles. And I think it's very different now. What happens is that actually we have to learn to fight our ground. We have to learn to create boundaries. We have to learn to relate and to let our partner know. We often expect a telepathic communication. Why didn't they do that for me when it was so obvious I wanted it? No, it isn't so obvious. We have to learn to communicate at a totally different level.
So that whole thing, and do you think in the honeymoon period, when we're loved up with the oxytocin and the excitement and the lust or whatever, we often do think they are mind reading, don't we? Isn't part of that great confidence trick of the universe that we imagine that they are reading our mind and meeting our needs before we've asked for it?
We think they're us. We actually, we've merged unhealthily with another. Well, unhealthily is probably not the right word, but we've merged with another, but it isn't based on, it's a bit like if you take acid or LSD, you get a hit.
We've never had that on this show. We've never had that reference.
You get a hit of what the universe is like, but you can't stay there. And it's a bit like this merging. If you really take your relationship through all of the trials and tribulations that come, so that you finally get to really know how to be with each other, then you have the potential for a great relationship, because there's no playing around anymore. There's no game playing or hidden personas that are in play.
So there is hope, and that again is the theme of today's show. There is hope after this, the high of the honeymoon. There is hope that we can keep the love alive.
I think it's more than hope. I actually think it's inspiring. I think it actually challenges us to bring out the best in ourselves, to actually learn to stand our ground, to learn to hear another's ground and respond to it, so that we compromise. I'll give you a very small example.
Please.
My girlfriend is she's very generous, and she's always making me raw chocolates and thinking about what I might need, cooking for me, buying me things that she thinks I need. And yesterday she had a really bad back, and I had this very good homeopathic cream that takes some of the pain away from this thing. And she asked me if I would bring it round, and I had a really busy day and a busy evening, but actually it wasn't I didn't have to give it a second thought, because I had been fed by her generosity, and it immediately triggered mine. That's healthy.
Okay. Well, this is interesting, because I'm a big fan of positive psychology. And interestingly, in the Times magazine over the weekend, they did a big article on this new bestseller in America that's written by a married couple, and it's called, I don't know, I've got it here, I've got the cutting, I think it's called Happy Together. It's a bit of a kind of title for us Brits. It said, are the Brits too cynical for this kind of loved up, two psychologists married, and they've written a book about how to stay happy forever. But a lot of it was positive psychology and sort of what you're talking about there. For example, looking for the positives, giving gratitude, giving affirmations.
Yes.
Like at the end of the day, saying to each other what you appreciate, what
Absolutely.
you appreciated today.
Yes.
And I know that because I've done that exercise with my husband. We went on an American, Harville Hendrix, in fact, we went to this massive workshop.
Yes.
200 people. And the very first thing you had to say, it's so un-British, you had to say, I'm amazing, you're amazing, we're amazing. And this whole room of 200 people going, we're amazing. And I thought, oh, he's going to walk out now because he's so British. But one of the tips they gave, their top tips, was that every day, at some point in the day, give each other, preferably maybe before you fall asleep, last thing at night, give each other 3 appreciations. I really appreciate, and they can be tiny. I really appreciated the way you spoke to our son today when he had that problem, or I really appreciate the way you cooked the onions a bit more than usual, so they were soft like I like them. And what I found in doing that, you have to remember to do it, it's a bit of a discipline, is that you begin looking for them throughout the day. So rather than, because we have that negativity bias, don't we, as humans, because that's what's helped keep us alive. We're always looking for threat and danger. So we have that negativity bias built in, really. So I feel you have to kind of retrain yourself to look positively. And I think one of the things after the honeymoon period is that you're alert to the negatives. So to kind of begin to retrain yourself of like, oh, there's something I can say tonight because he smiled at me in that lovely way, or she did that thing. Does that fit with what you were just saying about?
100%, and I would also add to it that basically what we have is we often get into vicious cycles. We get into places where there's some breakdown in the relationship, and then you get into a vicious cycle where you're at odds with each other, and then things get worse and worse, and you end up not speaking.
Yeah.
As well as a vicious cycle, there's also a virtuous cycle.
Yes.
And in the virtuous cycle, what you're looking at is how can you not to do. I don't agree with the 3 times a day that you do it as a clinical thing.
Yeah.
But actually, you start to train yourself to go, my partner looks beautiful today. Say it instead of think about it.
Yes. I often say that to my husband because you say, oh, of course I thought that was it. Say it. You've got to say it to me.
Don't try and do telepathy.
Exactly.
Until we've evolved a bit more.
That will be our big message for today, isn't it? Don't do telepathy.
That's right.
Right, very exciting. We've got our first question today, Malcolm. So, Joanne asks, for the first few years of my relationship, it felt like we were always moving forward. We moved in together, we got engaged, we were planning the wedding, but now we're settled. I can't stop asking myself, is this it? How can we get the excitement back? Thank you, Joanna. And just to say, anyone else out there who's watching, if you have a question, please write them now in the comments or anything you want to say about what we're saying, Malcolm and I are saying, because you don't have to agree with us. So please write your comments and we will get around to your answer. But that's Joanne. The excitement's gone after that. She says a couple of years, doesn't she? They've sort of had the progression.
Yes.
I would say that wasn't just the oxytocin thing, really.
No.
If you've done the engaged and the moving in engaged wedding, I'm guessing she might be married now, so she maybe has had the real honeymoon. The end of the real honeymoon.
Yes, exactly.
And that's quite a point of flattening,
then you've got real life, and then you're knackered after a day's work, or actually you feel like I want some alone space, and your partner's desperate to have some us space. That can be real problems. So I think that here, actually, I would go against my previous advice, where I would say, do something disciplined. So I made a series called Made for Each Other for Channel 4 back in the early 2000s, where we had CCTV cameras on couples 24 hours a day for 2 weeks.
Brilliant.
And then we brought them into the studio, and then I gave them advice on what to do to up their relationship.
Right.
And one of the key pieces of advice I gave people is to create date nights. So you do something different. You go outside the box, because the trouble is, it's very easy to get into a groove where you're working hard, you come home, you're tired, you may make love sometimes, you'll eat together, but actually life becomes a bit samey. And by changing, and this is a great saying, which is if you do what you always did, you get what you always got. But actually, can we do it differently? Can we actually go outside of our norm? Whisk your partner off to Paris, or take them on a camping tour, or do something that changes the shape of the relationship, and so you rebuild in excitement and stimulation. But you're guaranteed, if you go down the same path, to do exactly what you've done every day, and you're tired. And this is part of modern life, is that we're often too tired to give the relationship a lot of credibility, and then the weeds grow over.
Again, because the garden metaphor.
It's the garden metaphor, and I like that metaphor.
Weeds grow over,
Yes.
You have to kind of pull them up, or plant a new plant.
Yes.
Or kind of change that patio, buy a new bench. I don't know.
You've got to keep refreshing.
Yeah.
If you don't refresh the relationship becomes stagnant and becomes samey, and you might carry around the corpse of the relationship for the rest of your life, but you won't be stimulated.
Oh, that's another good phrase. You might carry around the corpse of the relationship, so the dead weight of it, the dead body.
Because there's nothing much happening anymore, but you don't want to start all over again with somebody else. So you just go, okay, well, this is what I'll settle for. But in settling for it, it ages you, and it actually saps your energy.
We had a whole episode we did a whole programme on settling. 2 weeks ago, which a lot of this stuff came up. Yeah.
Yes.
But Joanne, I would just say, I don't know, often I think when people say the excitement's gone, that can be a euphemism for the sex, which was sort of almost like automatic. You know, like people say like, oh, when we first met, we couldn't be in a room, we would rip each other's clothes off. It just happened. And then obviously with these hormones going, the honeymoon period ending, as we've said, that also takes, with the gardening metaphor, sort of thought and planning, and people are often dead against that, aren't they? They want it to be as it was when they didn't really have to make that effort. They think sort of good sex shouldn't have to have effort and planning. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, good sex on its own is not enough for a relationship. You can often see a relationship where there's been great sex, but actually it's a nightmare to be in a relationship with that person.
Yeah.
So I think that we have to cultivate these 4 pillars. How do we cultivate them? How do we stimulate each other emotionally? Do we go and meet with friends who inspire us, who then give us some uplift and engagement?
Yeah.
Do we learn to acknowledge each other? Do we really start looking, as you said before, for the good in another human being? And also, can we make a practice of things we do together that uplift the relationship? Now, I think what's really healthy is meditating together. Even if it's a few minutes a day, you actually spend some time in silence together and actually just let the day go, or start the day that way.
And the Hendricks said at this workshop, they had a kind of sillier one, but why not? They said, hold hands and bounce up and down together, because it just makes you laugh, because it's silly. Now, I've never actually done that because it's too silly, but Joanne, well, kind of just to summarise for you, I hope that's helpful. So Malcolm's talking about his 4 pillars. So it's basically, could you do something new? Just think outside the box, maybe use that garden metaphor. Think of like, you know, what could we do that's out of our comfort zones, that puts a bit of interest back, and we see each other then in new ways again, slightly new ways, and that's the essence of keeping interested and excited, I think, really. Would you?
I would agree with that, and then I would also add that sometimes relationships inevitably get into trouble. It's almost like you reach different hurdles in a relationship, and you might fall at a hurdle and then the relationship finishes, or you might learn to leap that hurdle together, and then the relationship expands and becomes better. And sometimes you're going to need the help of a professional. I'm loath to recommend therapy to everybody, because it doesn't necessarily suit everyone. In fact, there's been a study done that showed that only 30% of people benefit from psychotherapy. But it is really useful sometimes if you've hit an impasse and you feel stale, or you feel perpetually in conflict. It's really useful to go to and this is important, to go to a good couples therapist.
Right, like someone that you've got recommendations.
Some recommendations, or you know that they're
reputable
good
body.
news. Exactly.
Great advice from Malcolm there, and more to come. But do you have a burning question? Do you agree with our assessments so far? You might not, you're allowed not to. We like healthy conflict. So please join in the conversation in the comments now. And if you're enjoying this show, be sure to share it with your friends, anyone you know, to get the nuggets of wisdom from Malcolm Stone, who I'm talking to today. So we'll be taking more of your questions after this look at one of eHarmony's love stories.
I think most people just look at photographs straight away, and I wanted more than that. I wanted someone that I could spend time with and share things with. Hi, I'm Mandy.
I'm Janine.
And we've been together just over 4 years after meeting on eHarmony.
I was single for about 5 years before I met Andy. Previous to that, I had been on other sites, and it was quite shallow the way they worked. eHarmony was very different. They took more time to sort of get to know what your personality, your interests are, and only matched you with people that would be compatible with you.
What I liked about eHarmony was it takes you quite a while to sit and go through the process of what you like, what you don't like. When we did actually meet, we found we were really compatible. We just clicked, massively clicked. And it's as though we'd known each other for quite a while, wasn't it? Really, it wasn't.
Definitely, yeah.
It didn't feel like a first date.
No,
even though I was nervous as hell.
He was quite nervous, actually. It was quite funny.
We both love travelling, don't we?
Love to travel.
We love cooking.
We love cooking together.
We both wanted children. We didn't have any children. We have a little girl now, which is great.
Massive thank you for letting me find you're my soulmate, aren't you? Really? So, yeah, I don't think I would have found him any other way.
Wouldn't have met without the website, and we thank eHarmony for that, definitely.
Definitely.
That is so heartwarming. I love those stories. They're very inspiring, the eHarmony love stories. You're watching Love Decoded, brought to you by eHarmony. I'm Jackie Marston, and today I'm joined by psychotherapist and author Malcolm Stern, and we're talking about how to keep the love alive beyond the honeymoon stage. So join in the conversation in the comments now, and don't forget to share the show if you're enjoying it. So, got another question. This is from Jack. Malcolm, because we've got a man here today, that's great. We'll probably get the guys are emboldened to write in their questions, so that is fantastic. Jack says, I feel like my wife places all the blame on me when our relationship goes through rough patches, which I don't think is fair. How can we start working through our problems together rather than continuing this blame game? Okay, thanks for that, Jack. That's good, because I wanted to come to you. I said you're an expert on conflict resolution. You do a lot of that work, don't you? So he's talking about one person blaming the other, his wife blaming him when they go through these the hurdles you talked about. So again, we are talking about communication. We talk, obviously, every single episode of this show, we talk about communication. But I would like some sort of practical examples. I think often people don't have the language, and it's quite good to actually think, suggest things people could say. You know, so for like Jack, if his wife says, I could role play his wife, you know, you always do this, you haven't booked anything for our social life, you don't put any effort into this, or I don't know, you never do any cooking, or you're a lazy so-and-so, I don't know, what I call naming, shaming, blaming.
Yes.
How would you model an answer, or what have you got to say for that, or how would you model an answer?
Well, it's interesting, because I had a dialogue with an ex-girlfriend of mine, and she always blamed me, and I always blamed me. So I think there's something about how we are robust with each other as well. So I think there's something for Jack about finding robustness, that he doesn't just automatically crumple. I'm not sure if that's what he does, but sometimes what happens is you crumple in the face of criticism.
Yes.
And then then you create your vicious cycle. So the criticism comes, you crumple or withdraw, and then the criticism comes more, and then you lose your confidence. And I think there's something very potent in finding confidence to say, I accept that, and what about ... So you actually counter it, but you don't deny the other person's reality.
Right.
I think one of the most violent things we do in relationships is to deny another person's reality, because we then deny their radar. And our radar's quite tuned in. So if she's naming something, she's probably named something she's genuinely disgruntled about.
Right.
The trouble is it's gone into a loop. What I often call, she's put the video on and just left it playing. But actually, sort of, he's going to have to challenge her. Now, this might be an ideal scenario where they do some work in couples therapy, where the therapist starts to unpick some of what's going on. But my guess is that he will probably be playing a part in this of not knowing how to handle the difficult stuff that's coming at him.
So, Jack, we're making assumptions about you here because we don't know anything about you. We haven't met you, but it's possible from what Malcolm says. I can imagine that, because I'm guilty of that myself. That's sort of almost like passive-aggressive, where you don't counter it, you don't calmly and assertively sort of stand up for yourself, or say like, okay, that's your reality, but I did this, or I'm doing this, or I'm trying to do this. And then you may be some classic, quite British passive-aggressive things, like you withdraw, or you're a bit sulky, or you even kind of maybe plot your revenge consciously or subconsciously and act that out. And then that goes into absolutely what you say about that vicious cycle, doesn't it? Because then the other person picks up on that, and then that maybe further triggers their criticism, their naming, shaming and blaming. So they're going, and you're maybe, the other person, maybe Jack, is sort of withdrawing. That's what you're saying, isn't it, really? It is,
and it just reminded me of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who was the great expert in death and dying.
Yes.
She talks about the 3 R's in a relationship, once the relationship starts to go past the honeymoon period, which is resistance, resentment and revenge.
Okay.
So you just reminded that, because you use the word revenge. And I think ultimately we can look like someone's sort of like cowering under. And what people often do in scenarios where they're feeling like they're under attack from their partner, they go look somewhere else. They go, well, she loves me. You know, so actually I can see that she really admires me. So I think it's a warning sign that the relationship is suffering under some strain, and something needs to be done.
So let's go back to those words. You're sort of almost like, if we're coaching Jack to use. So you said admit that yes.
Let's just do this a different way, Jackie.
Should we do it as a role play?
Yeah, let's do it as a role play.
Oh, we love it. Okay, great.
I'm going to be Jack, and I'm not sure how Jack is, but we'll do it as a role play, and then I'm going to try and I'll do what I think Jack probably does, and then we'll change it to see what might be done.
Okay. So you're going to do what you think he normally does?
I'm going to do what I think.
So I'm his wife. I'm going to attack you and blame you.
Yep.
Well, we're right. We're stuck in the doldrums again. This has got so boring, and I think it's your fault because you never put any
it's not really
excitement,
my fault.
or you don't think of anything we can do.
I try.
It's like you don't put any effort or imagination into it.
But I keep trying. I don't know why you get so upset with me all the time. It's really horrible.
Because I don't. It's not. You're not the man I married or the man I fell in love with. Was exciting, and I'm just.
Well, I live my life, and I go out to work every day, and I bring home the bacon. So I don't know why you're getting so upset with me. Okay, so that's the,
okay. I was going to say
that's the vicious cycle. Now let's try and do this in a more skillful way.
Yeah. Okay.
Go for it again.
So, Jack, it's just got so dull, and it's you because you never do anything. I think you're kind of lazy. You don't put effort into it. You don't plan things. You're just not the man I fell in love with.
What would you like me to do?
Oh, okay. Well, maybe arrange one of our date nights. Come up with an idea. Come up with something different.
Let's do that, darling, and you arrange a date night as well. So we'll do one each this week and next week.
Brilliant. Did you see how disarmed I was in the role play? That absolutely took the wind out of my sails.
What I was doing initially is I was defensive, I was under attack, I was hunkering down in my shelter.
Yeah.
And what I'm doing at the end is we have I work at a place called Skiros in Greece, and we have a regular morning meeting. And in the morning meeting you have room for improvement, but what goes with it is suggestions for change. You can't just say, this doesn't work. You've got to say, this doesn't work, and what I'd like to see is that.
Yes.
So you start to use your brain to build.
But can I also point out, it's great, we've never done a live role play on here before. I love role play because you learn so much, don't you?
I'm a psychodramatist.
Brilliant. Yes, you do learn so much, don't you? The learning is very intense. Was your tone and your body language. So you immediately look more confident.
Yes.
As Jack, you stood up. You had a kind of calm, loving tone, but it was quite assertive.
Exactly.
You weren't on that back foot going, not me, it's
See, that's really great. So that's why I like doing the role play, because it takes you past the sort of the intellectual, well, if he tried this or tried that. We did it. And actually, it was quite fun doing it. And I found that part of me without knowing what I was going to find.
Brilliant. And I was in the moment with it. So I was kind of trying to be the naggy, shrew wife, horrible words, but that's how we tend to characterise people, or the husband. And you disarmed me. I think my mouth dropped open because I wasn't expecting that, because you did something unexpected. And then I went with the kind of delight and expectation.
Because actually, what she's really saying is not, you're not this, is not this. She's saying, I want more. I want something new. I want something fresh.
But again, it's about the mind reading. That she has to own that and say what she wants.
And we have to learn to be skillful when we're complaining, when we're looking at sort of saying something's not working. If we can do it from a loving place, it makes a whole difference. So if I'm to say to you, darling, you never put the rubbish out on a Monday night and the dustbin come on a Tuesday, I'd really appreciate it if you do it. You're going to get a very different response to, why are you such a lazy good-for-nothing? You never do that.
Again, then just remember that, Jack, and we'll say to everyone out there, kind of my top tip, and I think this is really good stuff we're going out with today, is if you think it's naming, shaming, or blaming, if you think metaphorically or in reality you're pointing the finger and going, you never, with the you word, and can you reframe that and put it into an I statement? Isn't that right, Malcolm?
That's
so
right.
When you do that, I feel like this. Own it, and that will make a huge difference. I hope that helps, Jack. You got a lot of more than you expected there with some psychodravel live on Love Decoded today. Now, another question here from Lily. Lily asks, my boyfriend and I spend virtually all our time together. We both work from home, we share the same group of friends and like the same things, but I'm starting to feel smothered. How can I explain to him that I need some time alone? Thank you, Lily. I think that's quite a common problem in this day and age, with more and more people homeworking, really, actually, in the digital age of homeworkers, especially sort of younger people and then older people. Sort of. What can you say to Lily? What's helpful there?
Well,
sort of smothered.
You named it before, which is, can we deliver the communication we need to deliver with compassion? Because if it's like, you're getting on my nerves, my space is full, I feel like I've got no time for myself, your partner's either going to go into one of two modes. One is defensive, and the other is aggressive.
Yes. Yes.
And what your skill will be to actually look at the end you want to achieve.
Right. What is my goal? What do I want?
So Stephen Covey in his 7 Habits of Highly Effective People says that one of the habits is to begin with the end in mind. What do you really want? Well, you want to spend more time together. And then I'd ask you the question, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy?
Yes, yes.
So you want to spend spend more time alone. So actually, it's your task to go to your partner and say, darling, I have a real need for ... and I'd really like to find a way that we can get that. And you might have a need for other things as well, so that we actually start to take more of what we need within the relationship. If you do that from a cooperative joint venture, you've got a lot more chance of getting what you need. But if you're constantly going, I wish he'd just go away, what you're going to get, you're going to be a seething mass of resentment, and he's going to feel the negative vibes coming towards him, and the relationship's going to be in stasis. So 2 really important things I'm just going to reiterate from what you said. Please do, yes, great. That's brilliant. It's Harriet Lerner, who, The Dance of Anger Woman, she says that a lot. Would you rather do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? Yeah. She opens one of her books with this kids playing in a sandpit, they have a fight, and then the next minute they've made up and they're playing again, because they can just let it go. But as adults, especially in our relationships where we expect, so much, the idea that we want to sit in that place of rightness rather than letting that go. And then the other thing you say is work as a team rather than be pitched against each other in the power struggle. And that goes right with the I'm right, he's wrong. Yes. So for Lucy, one more thing I'd say is that my good friend and colleague Val Sampson, who has written lots of books, very good one on tantric sex, we came up with this acronym when we were running workshops for couples called BEAR, B-E-A-R, of just kind of, that people could learn of how to have difficult conversations. And the B stands for breathe. Before you say the difficult thing, Lucy, it's like kind of big breath out, because that will take the tension out of your face. Because often when we want to have a difficult conversation, we're holding that in our jaw and our eye. The pupils are quite small and tight, and the other person is reading that as a threat, as you said, and their amygdala starts going off, and it puts them into fight, flight, or freeze. So they're going to try and leave the room, or attack back, or be frozen. So if you can do some breathing, or even just one big in for 3, out for 5 before you have a conversation. And then the E stands for eulogize. Say something nice. Give them a genuine descriptive compliment. Yes. Lily could say, I love it that we're both at home when we help each other out with our work problems, but actually I feel it's a bit much. And then A is for accept, that you accept the reality, and then R is that you respectfully, using like the I statement, say what you would like to happen. So it's a version of what but I just love an acronym, because people can kind of like, and BEAR, because it's kind of like a big, you can think of teddy bear or big scary bear, or bearing your soul. But people find that really, really helpful. I think that's a good acronym, actually, Yeah, that's BEAR. Great. Breathe, eulogize. I'd say it to Lily, breathe, eulogize, accept, and respect. Ask respectfully. Might be our last question. We might get a couple more in. Matt asks, I've always tried to be romantic in my relationship, even if it's just through little things, but I feel like my partner is taking it for granted and I'm starting to resent her. We talked about resentment before. Should I stop making an effort? Should anyone ever stop making an effort? If you want the relationship to terminate, please stop making an effort. We're never going to advise that, are we? If you want to make the relationship work, and there's enough that's going on for the relationship, once you've got past this stuff that's in the way, then you do have to make an effort. The trouble is, we often knock on the same door expecting it to open, not realising that the next door is the one that will open if we learned how to push on that one. So I would say what he's doing isn't working, and therefore he has to try something else. And actually, he also might try to elicit information from her. This is communication. Again, What do you need, darling? I'm feeling this. What do you need? What's going on? I really want us to be ... I want us to be happy, contented, together. And actually, I really need to know what would make it work for you. And I love making romantic gestures. Do you appreciate them? So you can actually sort of go, you can ask things like that. You can learn to, and one of my ex-partners used to say, I haven't got that many, but... I sounding quite a lot. Well, is that actually touch is the most fantastic language. Yes. Actually, if you touch your partner, and you don't try and hammer it all out from a cerebral place. I agree. You can go a whole lot further. Because again, going back to the amygdala, and that kind of neuroscience, how we're so triggered, if we touch anything to do that soothes, that's why I say give the compliment, because that
soothes people.
Absolutely.
But touch is an even better way of soothing. Or if you're walking together and you're holding hands and that's when you bring up the difficult conversation. We are running out of time. We've had so much information we've given, I think, today, and some really, really good ideas. Could we just, maybe in the last minute, think of what is our top takeaway for our viewers today? What would be kind of like one from you, one from me?
You go first.
Oh, okay. Well, it always comes down to the communication, doesn't it? But I think the mind reading, actually, I may have stolen yours here, to not think, when we're in the honeymoon period and the loved up stage, we merge, we think the person can read our mind, because sometimes they can, but we've got to be aware that no one is a mind reader, and we have to ask for what we need, ask for what we want, but in these kind of the bare ways, calm, loving, soothing, and think of the end goal.
Great.
Good, Matt. I got quite a few.
I was going to say you're one about acknowledgements, but we've said that quite a bit in the programme. But what I'd like to say is actually about making eye contact, about having touch, and also before difficult conversations to pre-brief and debrief them. So we need to create a support system of friendships, because I think that's really important in this day and age where we're so technologically overwhelmed that we need to create a support system of friendships, people we can reach out to who get us. And we say, I'm not have people say, oh, isn't he terrible when you say, here's my problem. But people say, well, have you thought about it this way? Or people who are going to really listen to us and know that after we've had this difficult conversation, that we're going to call them back and get some support for having had the conversation.
And that's something fresh that we hadn't brought in before, so it's great. So that's our top tips. It's like stop the mind reading, communicate, and get your support system of good friends who will listen to you and listen and come up with good ideas.
And pre-brief and debrief difficult conversations.
Pre-brief and debrief. So that's all we've got time for today. If we didn't get to your question this week, don't worry. We will be back live at 12:30 next Tuesday when our subject will be religion and dating. So if you have any questions or comments on that topic or anything else related to love, dating and relationships, please get in touch now via Facebook, the Facebook page, or Twitter at eHarmonyUK, or head to eHarmony's dating advice site for further information. I'd like to thank Malcolm Stern, been an amazing guest, and please tune in next week. Goodbye.